Okay, good afternoon, everybody. You're all really welcome to the RHA here this afternoon. So my name is Colin Martin, and I am this year's curator of the RDS Visual Arts Awards. My background is I'm an artist, I'm an art educator, so I'm the head of the RHA school upstairs here in the building, and I also have curated on occasions over my career. So in some ways, doing this role or being offered to do this role was, like a dream role to be offered, because it kind of combined all of those things that I'm, passionate about. So just to say a little bit about the Visual Arts Awards. So, they've been in existence for over 160 years, and I suppose if you look back on that history, it's a very storied history, and many of the recipients of the Taylor Art Awards, some of it kind of reads like a who's who of Irish art history. People like Louis Le Brocq, living artists like Dorothy Cross and James Hanley have all received the Taylor Art Awards. So. In some ways, I suppose the configuration of the awards and how they worked was kind of remodeled about 9 years ago, maybe to reflect some of the changes that happened both in art and art education and the ambition of students and graduates and the type of work that they were making. So. Now it's an all-island process where curators go to all the colleges and institutions on the island. They longlist, work that they find compelling. And then there's, I suppose, a second part of the process where judges come in and then they make the shortlist, and that's what you'll see here in the show today. So. It is very rigorous. Work has been really argued about, talked about, discussed. Some decisions are made through consensus, some through discourse. But it's always, I suppose as a judge, it was a real privilege and enlightening experience to be able to see the range and breadth of work that's been made in colleges all throughout Ireland, and to see what young artists are making and talking about with their art. So before I go on to talk about all the artists individually, I'm just going to talk about an artist who's maybe not in the RDS Visual Arts Award this year in 2024, but was a shortlisted artist in 2022, and that is Sive Moles, who's in the gallery here. So we might go into the gallery here and have a look at Sive's work. So one of the reasons why I wanted to include Sive Moles' work in the tour is, I suppose, this idea that the Visual Arts Awards, it is in some ways it's become the gold standard for young and emerging artists. Like, it's an amazing platform, amazing opportunity. But also, I suppose, all art is a long game, and sometimes, it takes resilience, it takes tenacity to have an art career. But I suppose you would hope that the Visual Arts Awards is some springboard, to other opportunity and to other exhibition opportunity. So Sive won an award in 2022, but is now here on residency in the RHA. And I suppose Sive's practice is about making these hyper-real sculptures. So this, since she has been on residency for the last year, I've seen her make two sculptures really. This one of the TikTok chimp, she sculpted it, molded it, airbrushed, I think, the blemishes and everything on the skin, and then every single hair is applied individually then. Another work that she's made while she's here is it was a hyper-real sculpture of Leo Varadkar. That's very completely hyper-real, but as a homeless person, and she left it outside the GPO as, I suppose, in protest at some of the things she was experiencing as an artist, couch surfing and finding it difficult to find a studio and to find a place to live. So I suppose I suppose she's one example of the many kind of alumni of the process. We do hope that they all go on and have a really good career in art. Okay, so I'm going to start. This is the first artist of the 10. So this is Ritchie. Claire is a graduate of the Belfast College of Art. And I suppose the majority, or probably all the other 9 artists are young artists at start of career, maybe in their 20s, early 20s to late 20s. Claire is a mature student. She began study in Newcastle in the UK, didn't complete her studies, and then there was a kind of, I suppose, period when she, and then went to re-engage back, and she went back to a BA in Belfast. I suppose one of the interesting things as well, when you kind of get to know the artists and from working with them as a curator, as I have been over the last 3 months, and I suppose one of the interesting things that I picked up on that was in between as Claire's day job or her way of kind of supporting herself, she became a dog walker, and she used to walk, I think 4 or 5 dogs every day on a beach. And I think that that kind of aspect of that creative process of kind of walking and being in your mind and collecting stuff is very much part of the work, which is I suppose a bricolage of collected things that were close to our pieces of wood, things that are to hand. But I also think she's quite knowing about like the history of painting, or the recent history of painting. So I would see antecedents in the work, like things like, the Art Povera group, which is Italian for poor art, or the idea that you can use a humble material or something that doesn't have the status of an art object and, combine it, or I suppose, through the artist's hand and combining things kind of transform something that's very ordinary. I think the other aspect of the work is her sense of colour. I was talking to the group earlier, like that. I suppose colour is a language in itself, and it's a language we all kind of understand, and it's beyond like a verbalisation of things. But I think she's got very instinctive sense of colour that's almost, I suppose, toy-like. It's these kind of pinks or hot pinks and light pinks and oranges. And I think she really combines these to good effect. I suppose the image itself could be read on completely abstract and formally and have no meaning, or it could be read as something like a landscape, or like a topographical view of a landscape, maybe the kind of landscape you might move through, or she might move through when she's walking. Okay, we're going to go inside. Okay, so this is Keara Simonsen from Belfast School of Art as well. It's quite a good representation of artists from Belfast this year. It's 3 artists that study there, and I suppose it's an audiovisual tone poem that in some ways explores her background. So it's about her father and the fact that she doesn't know her biological father, and she's not in contact with her biological father, and her father was Filipino. And I suppose it works on 2 levels. On the audio level, Keara is I suppose trying to re-engage with the Filipino language. It's not something that she's experienced or she grew up with, and a dialect of the Filipino language called Tagalog. But it's her way, I suppose, of kind of reconnecting, and she's not quite sure if she's speaking it in the mother tongue or in the or how it might actually be spoken. But I suppose it's a way of kind of mining into those kind of layers of loss and connection and diaspora, and I suppose that's what we hear. But what we see is something very kind of simple. It's kind of her looking at her immediate environment, her house in Northern Ireland, and the surroundings, and I suppose kind of looking for meaning in the everyday. Like, so she speaks about birds appear quite often in the piece, and this idea, that birds are migratory, and they move from place to place, and that really kind of, I suppose, reflects her life. Having she moved from Canada then to Northern Ireland. But also, I suppose, just looking for kind of quietly poetic, things that might unveil or reveal themselves, in daily life. it's probably structured a little bit like a poem as well. So it's in stanzas. There's bits of text in between things. So it's again it's quite a poetic, low key work, I think, compared to other works which maybe assert themselves. I think this is a work that that's meditative, that you spend some time with, that you get drawn into. Also, when we're installing the work, we kind of wanted it to, I suppose, to have this intimacy as well. That as a viewer, if you're sitting there, that you're kind of close to the work, or you feel close to the work, and that you can get involved in it. So one thing I think that happened this year that's new is, there's 120 long-listed artists or students, from all over the island. And they haven't been included in the exhibition before, but this year the RDS funded a videographer to go out to each college and to talk to each long-listed artist, to find out about their work, how they're thinking about the work, but also, I suppose, to talk to the art educators and the heads of school. And I think this is an invaluable document, but it's, and I suppose it's amazing for the audience to see what the judges have seen, because this is what the judges would see when they're trying to, when they're trying to look at the longest. But you get a sense of, the sight line across, everything that's being made at the moment on the island, and it's just, I suppose as well, just to kind of sometimes meet the face behind the work. And hear how people or how artists talk about their work, how they're thinking, and what they're looking at, and why they're making their work as well. So I think this is a fantastic document. I'm sure, it's not an easy thing to, in that short space of time, the degree time is maybe a couple of weeks, to try and get everywhere, because you have. From the urban to the rural, you have Belfast, you have the National College of Art and Design in Dublin, but you also have colleges like the Sherkin Island programme, which is TU Dublin's programme, which is out on Sherkin Island. So you're getting the sense of the range and breadth of work that's being made at the moment. One of the things when I started off with the judging panel as curator, and I was asked, did I have an agenda? Was there any kind of story that I would like to tell as curator about work that's being made at the moment, or is there any kind of framing around the show? And I actually kind of felt like the opposite. I kind of felt like, I really wanted to kind of listen and hear the kind of work that's being made, and that, maybe hopefully through that process, then, thematics, might kind of arise. And I think that's been the case because, and I'll highlight a number of, I suppose, strands or relationships between the work in the show. And this is Stell De Burca. And I think, I suppose one aspect that I think runs through some of the work is LGBTQ issues and issues of identity and queerness, and talking about those things in the work. So Stell's work is about trans experience, binding of the breasts, shaving of the hair, and maybe hinting at some of the I suppose the confusion or messiness or say here in the bedroom that might and the psychology of that experience. And I think Stell's also interested in comic book culture, and how how narratives unfold in comic books. From conversations we were having, I was saying in the comic book there's the kind of classic male hero of the comic book, but also I think there's comic book artists like Alison Bechdel or Robert Crumb, who I suppose through comics, talk about the underrepresented voices, or difficulty in articulating things. So I think Stell really kind of uses visual narratives to try and to articulate things. So it's very much about a journey. In the triptych here, it could be read left to right or right to left. It could be about covering up. It could be about revealing and becoming. And I think the other aspect of this, I was talking to Stell about the idea of meta-modernism, which is a strain identified in culture at the moment, where I suppose how do you kind of talk knowledgeably about art and about the history of art, but sincerely. So, I don't think she's using postmodern irony like the way, say, a pop artist would with this kind of yellow, POW sign. It's not ironic. I think it's more sincere and heartfelt. And I think, it could be, it's as much about empowerment as confusion and all of those things that are kind of, wrapped up in the psychology of the work. So yeah, this is Kyle Fairbanks, and Kyle is from Sligo IT, and looking at the range of approaches over of what emerging artists are using at the moment. Probably roughly half and half, like half the group are makers, people like physically making paintings and sculptures and, working with their hands. Half are kind of maybe working more in the virtual sphere, working with film or video or sound or various kind of media process. But yeah, I think Kyle's a real maker. He's a real, hands-on. And this is, I suppose it's like a science fiction Shebeen bar that he made from discarded wood from his family home. They were doing some work and he began to, I suppose, make and construct, this bar. I think he's a real world builder. He builds his own world. He's very immersed in his own world, but also his world is immersive. And he does want people to, engage and come back here. There's a kind of, there's great detailing, in the sculpture behind her. And he's also made his own language. Which can be deciphered by the viewer here with its own alphabet, so you can decipher this. So this says food above here, and yeah, I just think there's great kind of detail, like in this pizza oven over here, and I suppose the other thing, in some ways it kind of nods to film production, but I think it's its own, this idea of a shonky aesthetic or something that looks kind of wrong or irregular, but in the context of, art looks right. And I think he really kind of, makes, in the detailing, from the stains on the bar here, he makes this really kind of convincing world. And I think it's part of, I suppose, a tradition or heritage of artists conjuring worlds, that in some ways kind of reflect our own world. This is Sorcha Browning's work. So Sorcha is from TU Dublin on Sherkin Island that I had mentioned earlier. And Sorcha is the overall winner this year. So Sorcha took the 10,000 Taylor Art Award, but also won 2 awards. Won the Graphic Studio Award as well, which is an opportunity to kind of work with the graphic studio to make prints and to be in residency in the graphic studio. And I think this is another kind of strain of work. I think that's occupying the artists in the show, is the idea of digital nativism, or being kind of part of a generation who have grown up with the internet and digital cultures. They haven't known anything different, but at the same time, are critical of it. And the impetus for this work was the idea of the digital cookie, and that when you click on a website and it asks you, to accept or not, what's happening with that data and what's, how is it being used. I think, though, I don't think she's getting too anxious or didactic about, or moralistic about that. She's kind of woven it into this kind of, I suppose, maybe kind of whimsical or absurd kind of narrative around using actual cookies, like chocolate chip cookies. And, you can see here them being stuffed down the silver cowboy boots, and here kind of dropping down, a pipe here. And I think it kind of references painting as well. It's very much almost kind of like an altarpiece, or this kind of classic kind of triptych that might be typical of something like the Ghent altarpiece, or Hieronymus Bosch, or one of those things that you might find in a church. I think interestingly though, it's very kind of deliberate that you come in from the back and that you see the artifice of the screen. You see how it's made, you see how it's physically made. And I think it's a beautifully made and crafted thing, this plinth with the 3 screens. And then I suppose the other aspects of it are, like clothes and how they make you feel, and how the performativity of clothes. So I think this, this Marilyn Monroe dress becomes, I suppose, a kind of character in its own right. And it's almost like, in some ways, it's constructed almost like something like stained glass, like with these kind of compartments. But also, I think, could reference cinema, someone like Wes Anderson or Jacques Tati, who have a dollhouse aesthetic of kind of looking at a space, or Hitchcock for that matter, and looking at the compartments, within a space and how someone might kind of move through it. This piece over on the floor. So she did work with her partner who built this, helped her build the screen, but also help her make the film. This was a green screen outfit so that he wasn't seen, when the cookies are being dropped. And then she got it stuffed afterwards, and it's like, I suppose, there's the virtual film, but there's the actual, the actual physical doll there as well. So I think the judges thought, well, first of all, it was extremely well-made piece of work and very skillful. I think she studied film before she went to study art. So, I think she has this, really deep skill base in, editing and software and projection mapping and all of those type of skills. But I think they thought it worked, on many different levels. Part of the judging, I was part of the judging panel, but I kind of stepped back for the awards, partly because I kind of worked with the artists, and you get to know the artists over the 3 months. You get to bond with the artists, and I think, it was really good for the judges to come in and completely see the work fresh. They may have seen it in the documentation form in the summer, but to just come in and see it actually physically installed, and how they would respond to it. Okay, so the two artists in the atrium, again, picking up on maybe talking about Stell De Burca's work, two artists in the atrium I think are interested in LGBTQ identity, and this is Cahal O'Connell, otherwise known as Miss Mary Jane, and this is a performance video where Miss Mary Jane is performing a song by the band Nickelback in a country style, dressed as a Playboy bunny. And I suppose what's happening in the work is, I suppose, kind of maybe reclaiming some of these things, like like the Playboy bunny, maybe has a problematic, I suppose, existence. Like country music as well. And I think he's kind of reclaiming these things, kind of rolling them all up in his own identity, and kind of representing them in a hyper-feminine form. On the night of the opening, Miss Mary Jane actually performed this here in the atrium, and there was like a really large crowd. There was about 600 people here, and really made for an electric moment. The other work here is, sometimes when you're talking to the artists, you have different frames of references maybe than they have. For me, I thought this was the film Under the Skin by Jonathan Glazer. There's a scene where Scarlett Johansson is filmed in secret going through a shopping centre, and she plays an alien in the film. And Jonathan Glazer wanted that sense of, celebrity and expression, even though it was filmed secretly and very ordinary and familiar, to kind of come through. And I thought in some ways Cahal was riffing on that, but it wasn't part of the intention. But I suppose it's a film filmed on a GoPro, filmed secretly, of him in a shopping centre, I think in Derry, going to Supermax, walking through Dunnes Stores, and coming out in the car park. And I suppose kind of looking, I suppose there's, it's kind of interesting to watch people's responses in the video. So the other artist here is Ava Lowry, and again, I think Ava's interested in ideas of queerness and identity, but maybe in a subtle or a more intimate way, and also about kind of using traditional, quite traditional forms, like and the genre of the nude and nakedness. And I think, if you go back to the roots of the genre, it was, I suppose it was the male patronage and the male gaze, and I think she's kind of looking to kind of move the dial and look at it from a female perspective. So, it's about two women, but it's through the female perspective as well. And I think she's kind of using quite traditional media as well. These are made with watercolor with a little bit of oil paint. And watercolor is quite kind of very, very traditional form. And these are watercolors that were made on a bedpost. Which actually, when we judged these first, and we saw them in documentation form, we thought they had been carved into the bedpost, but they've been very subtly painted on the bedpost. And Ava was a recipient of the other €5,000 award, which was the Lewis Crosby Award. There's two artists in this space, Heather Hughes and Madeleine McCarroll. Both are from the NCAD Media Department. And the NCAD Media Department, I think, has had quite a lot of representation in the RDS Graduate Awards over the last 9 years. And I suppose why is that? Is because I suppose it's looking at new ways of making art, like using technology, using things like virtual reality, I suppose using the tools that young artists and emerging artists have around them to make art. But also, as I said earlier, I think this idea of the digital native and the complexities of living in a digital world, I think, are explored in this work. But specifically, the ideas of kind of looking, and if you're looking, or you're being looked at, or you're looking, or they know you're looking at you. So. If this work is, if this figure is in repose in the bath, but if you go here, or if you approach it, there's a motion sensor. So, and I think in some ways it's using. It is using the aesthetics of something like Psycho by Hitchcock, which was about looking and voyeurism and these things. She's also made these websites here. Somewhere she's kind of refusing to perform, and somewhere she is performing. So I suppose this idea of being looked at and the sense that you maybe have to perform, in the digital sphere, and it's all I suppose, presented like messy kind of messy bedroom or office, where there's maybe some of the reading material that she had when she was in final year, like she's reading things like Simone de Beauvoir, but there's also bottles of wine, Monster, drinks, Jaffa cakes, Snickers and paracetamol, like maybe all the things you need to get through college. So this is the work of Madeleine McCarroll. Mary's an award winner. Mary received the RHA Studio Graduate Award. And what that is from January, Mary will be on residency here in the RHA, and she'll get like a fully supported studio that's rent-free. She can also access any of the classes or the master classes or professional development or any of those things that we offer in the RHA school upstairs. And I think that's really important, for a number of reasons. But I think when students are coming out and they're graduating, they're probably at their strongest creatively. They're probably at their peak, and they have the support of their tutors, their peers, the technicians, the amazing resources that are in a college, like the libraries and everything, etc. And in some ways, it's quite a vulnerable period, when you step off that ledge and into the real world, because maybe you don't have those kind of supports. So I think an award like that really bridges a gap between academia and professional life. And I think it's really important to look after our emerging artists, because you know, as I was saying, you know, from when you look at the video of all the 120 artists from around the country, they're making amazing work, and sometimes there's not enough space for them to show work. There's not enough space for them to make work. So, you know, we really need to kind of, I suppose, nurture that period when you graduate. But to talk specifically about the work, Mary's of dual heritage, both Bahamian and Irish heritage. So the work started with an intense period of research around Caribbean culture and culture of the folklore of the Bahamas and the Caribbean. And this figure here is called a duwen, which kind of recurs in the work. And the duwen is almost like I suppose, a fairy tale, a fairy-like or folkloric figure that dies in baptism and then is reborn, but is reborn with their feet backwards and is, I suppose, a kind of playful spirit. So this kind of features heavily in the work, as well as aspects of cosmology that's specific to Caribbean and voodoo cultures. And she does live draw in the space. So twice a week, Mary will be here. And she'll be working on the blackboard there with the two spotlights. So, like, I think this work really kind of combines, you know, it combines drawing, combines performance, it combines like video and installation. But, you know, and I think her specific interest around this figure is, I suppose that both cultures, both Irish and Bahamian cultures are post-colonial. And in some ways have been reborn or, you know, changed in some way. And I think that's all there, you know, in the background of the work. So actually, it was interesting because we've had a lot of college groups in, which is great. And the college group that was in yesterday was her department, and her tutor Leah Hilliard was here. And she was talking about, you know, the process of all this coming together. And she started making these clay figures of the duwen. And in some ways they weren't quite working, and she ended up kind of breaking them apart. And that's what's on this panel here. And it's, you know, it's projected there. So, yeah, we were kind of talking about sometimes that process that artists go through where you trial and test things, you make prototypes, sometimes you fail, sometimes your failures are the things that point, you know, to this maybe installation, which is, you know, quite considered and sophisticated, and you know, so yeah, these were figures of the duwen that she broke up. So this is the work of Fionn Timmins, and Fionn is from the Crawford College in Cork, and it's a work of a circle of reclaimed bog oak that Fionn has treated in beeswax and sanded back. And I suppose Fionn is, as much, you know, he could be referencing things from you know, the land art movement of the 1970s, but I think actually he's more interested in, you know, ancient art in the landscape of Ireland, and looking at, I suppose, the period before, you know, we as humans have made kind of permanent marks on the landscape, and it's both installed obviously physically here, but he installed it in the Cumra Mountains, which we see here on the screen, and it's aligned with the spring equinox. So there's a sequence where the sun, I think, passes and aligns with this large bog oak here. And then the sound are field recordings that he made when he was there. He stayed with the work. He slept with the work, I think, up there for 5 nights. You know, and I think that's all part of maybe the ritual of the work. And Fionn was an award winner, so he won a very nice award, which is the CCI award, which is the Centre Culturel Irlandais, which is the Irish Centre in Paris. So it's a centre, you know, for art, for literature, and music. So he gets a studio, he gets accommodation, and he gets to spend, I suppose, 3 months making work in Paris and living there. So I suppose that idea as well of maybe some international springboard, you know, for the artist as well. I think it may have started with his father, kind of collecting work, but I think from the river shore and reclaiming them from the banks of the river shore. And I think they're 6,000 years old. I mean, it's quite amazing that he's managed to get them, that they go from that scale down, you know, and back around again. So yeah, I suppose like the other thing as curator, I probably learned a huge amount about this building and what can and can't function in the building. So when we sat down to kind of talk about how all the work was going to fit together, when I sat down with Ian White, who was the head technician, we realised that this couldn't go anywhere on the ground floor because you know, it has to be fixed to the floor, and nowhere, like there's underfloor heating on the downstairs. So we really had to kind of, I suppose, think about how we're going to solve the problem. And you know, luckily, the gallery was going dark here. The gallery 1 was going dark for 2 months, so we were able to kind of corner off this part of the gallery. Normally, works like this would, you know, it would probably come up to this floor, you know, and always be shown in galleries 1, 2, or 3. So yeah, so we built this wall across, you know, and kind of, I suppose, walled this space specifically for Fionn's work.